sound design.
My name is Macy Schmidt, and I am an orchestrator and music director, as well as the founder of the Broadway Sinfonietta. I kind of latched on to cast albums at an early high school age, as I'm sure many of us did, and really latched on to the big orchestra cast albums. I would listen to a cast album, sans the overture, skip the overture. And then after I listened to every other track, I would try to make my own overture, and then I would listen to the actual overture to see what they did and if I liked mine better. But I just was always very interested in manipulating music and how different arrangements can make you feel different ways. And so it was kind of a slow burn unfolding the interest, and an even slower burn unfolding that it was a career, because no one tells you that it's a career.
Hi, I'm Jessica Paz, sound designer of Hadestown. I was working at a community theater, and I had been a stage manager for a while, and there was a particular show that I loved very much. It was Bat Boy the Musical, actually, and the sound was just, there was problems. And I thought, well, maybe I could hop in and fix it, and I did, and we finally had a show that didn't have feedback, and I was like, oh wow, this is really fascinating. I didn't know I could do that. So I started mixing, and then I just kept going from there. Somehow I just fell in love with it. It was really fun and tedious and felt like something I would never quite be able to figure out, you know? And I'm still learning to this day.
Hi, my name is Sammy Canold, and I am a director. My parents tell me the story of how when I was a toddler, my favorite pastime was to sit at the bathroom counter with the little shampoo bottles that you get from hotel rooms and put on little shows with them on the bathroom counter. And so they claimed that, they knew I was going to be a director since I was 3 years old. I don't think that's entirely possible, but definitely the interest in theater, the interest in moving people around in space, the interest in patterns, I fell in love with it really early.
Hi, I'm Tweed McCallum, and I'm a sound designer. I was a student at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and they produce a lot of famous actors and dancers, but a lot of people don't know they have a technical theater program, which is what I was in. When I was there, they didn't have a sound program, and they still don't, unfortunately, but we produced a lot of student musicals and plays that I was a dresser for. So standing backstage, waiting behind the wings for my actors to come off, I became amazed with speakers and microphones from a distance, although I never got the opportunity to touch it when I was there. It wasn't until I moved to New York in 2018 and got my first job that I started learning sound for the first time.
I'm Valerie Lau-Key. I'm the producing director at Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. Prior to that, I've been a stage manager and performer. As a performer, it allowed me into the theatrical community. I took that background of the dance that I had poured my training into, and I got a chance to be on stage. I used that time traveling on the road to spend every day that I could watching load-ins and load-outs. I watched the process of what it took to make the magic happen. And that was even more magical to me than the heat of the lights, the audience, and I found when I was a stage manager that it tied all of those things that I love doing together. Sometimes people say, what do stage managers do? And sometimes I'll say, they make the scenery dance. As a dancer, I enjoyed that. And you're bringing something to life that brings all of those pieces together. So that's why I really enjoyed going from performing to being backstage.
The orchestrator is basically responsible for, like, if you go to the New York Phil and you see a big symphony playing a bunch of parts, or honestly, if you go to a Broadway musical and you hear a big orchestra, the orchestrator decided what every single instrument was going to play. A composer will write a song that often, but not always, is written on one particular instrument. Maybe it's piano, maybe it's guitar, and then the orchestrator will take that song and kind of expand it and assign a part to every instrument in the orchestra, fitted to how big or small that orchestra is.
Out of everyone on the design team, sound designers truly have the responsibility of bringing something to the story that people literally do not see.
When you get a Broadway space, you just get 4 walls, right? You get 4 walls, maybe some internet and, seats. And we bring in everything completely custom for every show.
The sound designer is supposed to create a visceral experience for someone watching the show, not only with sound effects and helping with music, but also making sure that the actors on stage can be heard clearly. And one thing that I love about sound is it's just as scientific and mathematic as it is creative.
Every microphone that's on every actor, every microphone on every instrument, every speaker, how it's processed, the way the microphones are EQ'd or tuned for every show is completely and totally custom.
So Evita has been and will always be my favorite musical. I think there was something about Ava's drive and determination and just put a female character on stage and unabashedly say, this is what I want. And to also show the ugly and the bad sides of that was really cataclysmic for me to see. It is a great privilege and an honor to tell true stories. I think that it is the responsibility of the director to deeply consider how they portray reality in terms of how they portray historical fact. And for me in my process, really what that usually sort of manifests as is doing a ton of research to make sure that I am being as faithful to reality as I can be if that's the mandate of the show, or if I'm deviating from reality, I'm doing it for a reason. And so I think that in the case of a show like Evita, it was really, really important to me to understand as much historically as I possibly could.
I do a few things on Hadestown. One is that I time all of the reverb, all of the special effects to the BPM of the music so that it very, very specifically fits. Either it wants to be very tight or very long and lush. Another trick that we use, which is one of my favorites, is we have an oscillator that's running throughout the entire show with a gate on it that opens whenever the kick drum is hit. So we add like a 2 millisecond thump of 60 or 55 hertz, I believe, is how we've tuned it to match the key of the music. 10 milliseconds, just like long booms, which take you on that journey out of the underworld. It's a bit jarring. You're just like, what? Wow, okay. And momentous, right? It meant a lot, not just to me, but for the representation of women in this field. And I hope it means, a lot to some young woman who maybe wants to move into this field to go, oh, when I watch the Tonys, I'm not just gonna see men up there. I'm not just gonna see cisgendered white men up there. I'm going to see people of color, and I'm going to see women. I'm going to see women of color. And I can do this too.
The Broadway Sinfonietta is an all-female identifying and majority women of color orchestra that is designed to showcase how excellent BIPOC women musicians are. Leading up to the pandemic, I'd become increasingly conscious of just the lack of women of color who do what I do, or the lack of women of color that I would even see in the rooms that I was in. And when I had put myself forward for shows that were gonna have a traditionally white Broadway sound, I would get responses that's like, oh, well, you haven't done work at this scale, you haven't done that kind of work. And I was like, well, that's the kind of work that is, that's the kind of work that is how my musical voice has been built. I had a feeling that it was the same for women of color instrumentalists too. And so the Sinfonietta originally started in my mind as like, it was sort of conceived as a one-off. I was like, I want to make a video of this song that I'd had an arrangement in my mind that I'd wanted to create for a really long time. I want to do it in like a big Broadway with a capital B sort of energy. And I want as many women of color as I possibly can have to play on it. And I just kind of want to like make a little statement with that and be like, look, like we can do this kind of music too. We can do this kind of music really well. And the response was so much more enthusiastic than I had expected.